welcome back to the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I am Shoob, and today we are here to cover the National Championship Game preview, predictions, and kind of deep dive into this and take an angle on this National Championship Game that I don't think a lot of podcasts or their outlets out there are giving you. I have some cool stuff that I think you guys will appreciate when we deep dive into the analysis of this year's game. And as you can tell, it's just me today. It's a solo monologue from your boy here, Shoob. So I do have Gonzo and Zan's predictions, but this video / podcast is going to be a little bit different today. Hopefully you guys can tolerate just me talking for a few minutes here, but I figured you guys would appreciate this. So let's get into it. Let's dive into this. So this year's national championship game between Washington and Michigan, definitely a national championship game that I don't think a lot of people would have predicted at the beginning of the year. A lot of people were high on Michigan for sure. I'm not surprised to see Michigan in the national championship game. I actually predicted them to be in the national championship game during the preseason. However, I did not think that they would be a favorite to win the national championship if they got there. And that's where they are. They're a 4.5-point favorite this year to win the national championship game over Washington, who, for the record, I also had Washington making the college football playoff, but I also did not think Washington would make it past just making the playoff. I did not think that they were capable of beating one of the big boys at the top of the sport and making the national championship game, let alone have a pretty decent shot to win it. And here they are. So it has been a pleasantly surprising year. I'm sure a lot of you are probably feel refreshed by a little bit of new blood here, playing in the national championship game. I certainly am. I think a lot of people echo that sentiment, Zan and Gonzo as well. So it's been a fun year for sure. A lot of the powers at the top of the sport have been down, and it's opened the door for some new parity, some new blood, some new life for the sport of college football, and it has been great. It's been a really fantastic year. So this national championship game, I kind of want to break this game down from a couple angles here. One, from a pure efficiency and stats angle, and also from a recruiting talent angle that really gives you a clear picture as to what recent history and recent data and trends tell you should win this game. So this graph here, this shows the previous 12 national champions and their offensive efficiency, their defensive efficiency, and their total efficiency. So if you go down to the bottom, you can see the average national champion usually finishes the year as the number one most efficient team in the country, shocker, or they're number 2, number 5, number 3. But as you can see, recent national champions all have been in the top 5 at the very least, a majority of them inside the top 2 of being the most efficient teams in college football. Most of those teams have been number 1, number 2, inside the top 5, the top 10 of offensive efficiency. And you can say the same thing about defense. Most teams finish inside the top 2 in terms of defensive efficiency. And that's why I have the average and median down there, because the median sort of omits outliers. So looking at the median data there, you can kind of tell the median national champion over the last 12 years is the number 1 most efficient team in the sport that year. They're inside the top 3 in terms of offensive efficiency, and they are inside the top 2 in terms of defensive efficiency. Now, Michigan and Washington. This is where these teams profile. Michigan, they're the number 2 most efficient team in college football. They're not number 1. They have the 5th best offense in the country, and they have the 2nd best defense in the country, which checks out. And then you have Washington, who is number 9. Yes, they are number 9 in terms of overall efficiency. Their offense is up there at number 4, and their defense, which is definitely the lesser of the 2 units there on that side of the ball, is 27th in the country. So, what does this tell you? From a pure efficiency standpoint here, Washington, if they were to win the national championship, would have the lowest overall efficiency, defensive efficiency of any national champion in recent history. That alone tells you that Washington, history is not on their side here coming into this game. But as far as Michigan profiles as a normal national champion, number 2 overall in overall efficiency, inside the top 5 in both offense and defense. They have an elite defense. So Michigan profiles from an efficiency standpoint as a typical national champion in recent memory. Now, from a recruiting standpoint here, this is what I find very interesting. From a recruiting standpoint, Here we have the 24/7 Team Talent Composite ranks, which is the rank that each national champion has had in terms of overall recruiting roster talent on their team. So how many 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, etc., what their overall Team Talent Composite rank is for that season across the whole roster. And unfortunately, we don't have data from 24/7 Sports from 2014 through 11. So that kind of sucks, but we have the blue chip ratio, and the blue chip ratio is basically the ratio of 5 and 4 star recruits on a team's roster to the number of 3 stars on their given roster. So Georgia in 2022 had a 77% blue chip ratio, which means that 77% of Georgia's roster was 4 and 5 stars, and 23% was 3 stars and below. So what does this tell you? The usual national champion in recent memory all have had blue chip ratios over 50%. That has been the precedent so far. So it basically means if your roster has more 4 and 5 stars than 3 stars or lower on its roster, you have a chance to win the national championship. If you don't, you have yet to win a national championship. So let's take a look at Michigan and Washington here. Michigan has only 2 5 stars on their roster, which, by the way, is the lowest amount of 5 stars since we've been able to track this data that a national champion would have. Only 2 of them, but they have a bunch of 4 stars as well. So Michigan still does recruit inside the blue chip ratio above that 50% mark. They're at 54%. So Michigan, according to the blue chip ratio, is a team that qualifies as a national champion. Washington, however, 0 5 stars. The Huskies do not have a single 5-star recruit on their roster, but they do have some 4 stars, but you can see their blue chip ratio is only 36%. So that means only 36% of Washington's roster is 4 and 5-star recruits. So what does that mean? Washington, if they win the national championship, would be the first team to win a national championship without a 5-star player on their roster, and they would also be the first team to break the blue chip ratio mark of winning a national championship under 50%. So as you can tell from an efficiency and recruiting standpoint, Washington would break a lot of firsts here. They would break the glass ceiling for a lot of things. But I find it very interesting. In fact, if you look at the overall team talent composite ranks, Michigan is only 14th. So Michigan, regardless of who wins a national championship, Michigan or Washington, they would have the lowest team talent composite rank since we've been tracking that data to win the national championship, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact, as I said before, a lot of the blue blood powers at the top of the sport are down this year compared to normal years. And what happens when the overall top of the sport is down? Well, you get a little bit of parity. You get some new blood that has a chance to chomp at the bit here, and that's what Michigan and Washington are doing. So, taking a look at previous national championship games in recent years, I decided to only go back to 2011 for the sake of consistency here. This is what the actual outcomes of those national championship games are in the last 12 seasons. So what does this tell you here? Well, if you look at the very bottom there, the average winning score of the national championship game is 40 points, and the average losing score is 21 points. So the average recent national championship game has had a score of 40 to 21, which results in a 19-point margin. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Oh, well, last year's 65-7 TCU Georgia blowout, that probably really skews the stats here. Well, that's what I thought too going into this. But then when you take the aggregate here and you take the median of these numbers, the median is just about on point as well to the average. In fact, the median scoring margin in national championship games is 19 compared to the average of 19.3. So it's about on the dot. So really, that Georgia TCU blowout doesn't really skew these stats as much as you would think. So what does that tell you? The average national championship game is a 19.3 touchdown blowout. I hope that's not the case this year, but that's what this tells us. The average national championship game is usually a 3-score blowout. Now, I decided to look at this from a Vegas perspective, looking at the spreads, and I found this also very, very interesting. You could see the list of all the spreads from the last 12 national championship games, who was favorited, and also if the favorites covered or not. So this is very interesting. So favorites have won 9 of the last 12 national championship games, which is a 75% clip. So 3 out of 4 times the favorite wins the national championship game. Favorites have covered 6 of the last 12 national championship games, which is a 50% clip. Yes, Vegas knows best. It is absolutely insane that Vegas is this sharp, but they are. So for those of you who think that the spreads are not the most accurate predictor of what is going to happen, they definitely are, because this thing is split 50-50 on the dot over the last 12 years. It is absolutely insane. And that's why Las Vegas and those casinos make millions of dollars every month from sports gambling, because they are as sharp as can be. Anyways, I found it absolutely insane that Alabama has been favored in 7 of the last 12 national championship games. That's right. Alabama has been favored in 7 of the last 12. So Alabama, in the 7 national championship games that they have been favored in over the last 12 years, they've won 5 of those, which is absolutely ridiculous. If you kick it back even further, the SEC has been favored in 10 of the last 12 national championship games. And of those 10 national championship games that SEC teams were favored in, they won 8 of them. So that just goes to show that the SEC really has been dominating, in particular Alabama. I don't know if any team will ever match the dynasty that Saban's created there, but listen, facts are facts. It has to be mentioned because these numbers are insane. So as far as this national championship game, though, there are no SEC teams. So again, this will be the first time since, I believe, 2014 that there will be no SEC team in the national championship game. It will also be, of course, the first time since 2014 that there will be no SEC team favored in the national championship game. So, no SEC this year. We got an all-future Big Ten natty. So the Big Ten definitely gets the final laugh here this season. So what does all this tell you about this year's game? So Michigan right now is a minus 200 moneyline favorite, so that means they have a 67% chance of winning this game according to Vegas, which is pretty close to the recent trend of favorites winning the national championship game 75% of the time. So that checks out. So what does this tell you? According to recent trends and recent data, Michigan is most likely going to win this national championship game. According to Vegas, Michigan is most likely to win it, according to recent trends, according to the efficiency metrics, and according to recruiting talent composite. All of these signs point towards Michigan winning the national championship game. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. You're thinking, oh, well, Washington seems pretty good. In fact, I think Washington has the better quarterback. They have NFL receivers. They have a quarterback that's going to go in the first round. Their defense is not great, but it's just good enough. Like, this team can legitimately win the national championship. Now, that is true. And that is because, like I've said multiple times, the door has been left ajar this year because a lot of the powers at the top of the sport are down. Now, that is a common theme throughout this year. That is why we are seeing all of these numbers here and these trends saying, hey, if Washington wins this game, they're going to defy all the odds, all the recent trends, etc., etc., and that is because of that fact. Now, Michigan in of itself winning the national championship would defy a lot of trends here because, like I said, Michigan would have the lowest team talent roster composite of any recent national champion. Michigan has the lowest power rating of any recent national champion. Michigan winning the national championship this year would also be sort of a little bit of an underdog story in of itself, but you don't see it that way because their opponent is even more of an underdog story when you look at recent trends and everything. So it really makes this national championship so interesting from that standpoint. And if you don't believe me, well, here's the numbers. Michigan right now, according to their power rating, according to Sagarin, which is one of the computer models that Vegas uses to determine their lines, this year's Michigan team, they would be about a 2.5 point underdog to last year's Georgia team. They would be, again, about a 2.5 point underdog to 2021 Georgia. They would be about a 10 point underdog to 2020 Alabama. They would be about a 7 to 7.5 point underdog to 2019 LSU. And they would be about a 6 point underdog to 2018 Clemson. So Michigan would be underdogs to all of the last 5 national champions. So again, it checks out. Yes, is this Michigan team very good? Are they elite this year? Yes, they are elite this year. But when you kick it back out and you were to copy and paste this Michigan team into any of the last 5 seasons, they would not be the favorites to win the national championship game, and they would most likely not win the national championship because they don't match up evenly to the powers at the top of the sport in previous years. Now, if you're a Michigan fan, You probably don't like me saying that, but that again, facts are facts. And it doesn't matter. You win in the environment that you are in, and in the 2023 college football environment, Michigan is arguably the best team in the country, and if they win the national championship, they will win the national championship in 2023. So it really doesn't matter. But again, I'm just providing context here to sort of give you the picture of how this year's Michigan team stacks up in terms of recent memory. And if you look at this year's Washington team to those previous, I mean, you kick it back even further, Washington would be double-digit underdogs to a lot of those recent national champions. So again, we really got to think of the context and the environment of the 2023 season when looking at this game and comparing these teams to recent national champions. But regardless of that, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to give a huge X's and O's breakdown on this game, but obviously it is very fascinating that these two teams have a huge contrast in styles. You have Washington with a high-flying offense, Michigan with the elite defense, the ground and pound, that pro-style offense. I think it is going to be fascinating from that standpoint that these two teams are almost complete opposites of one another. And I have a feeling that it's going to be a relatively close game. I do not think that this is going to be a blowout. The average trend of the national championship games being a 19-point margin, I do not think that it will be a 19-point margin this year. But I think that Michigan will ultimately win this game. And of course, you know me, I'm the data guy here. I'm going to follow all the data and the recent trends. Everything is pointing to the fact that Michigan should win this game. And that's what I'm going to take to win. I'm going to take Michigan to win this game outright. And in terms of the spread, I am also going to take Michigan to cover the 4.5-point spread. I think Michigan wins by about a touchdown to 10 points. So 7 to 10 points, I think that is what Michigan wins by. Gonzo and Zan. Gonzo is actually going to take Washington to win this game. So he's going to ride the Huskies to win this game as a 4.5-point underdog and win the national championship game. What would be the first national championship for the Pac-12 since USC won it back in 2004. And Washington, as I've stated on this video, they would break the glass ceiling for a lot of trends. They'd be the first team to win a national championship without a 5-star on their roster, with the lowest efficiency numbers and power ratings of any recent national champion. That would be Washington. And hey, if there's a team that can do it with that profile, it would be Washington, because they have an elite quarterback in Michael Penix that's going to go in the first round of the draft. I feel like that is a given now, that Penix is going to go in the first round. And as far as Zan is hedging. Again, he is the hedge master. He has brought out the trimmers because his hedges are nice and neat. He is going with Michigan to win, but he thinks Washington will keep it close and covers that 4.5-point spread. So there you go. A lot of different variety from us in terms of picking the national championship. And Gonzo's looking to go 3-0 in terms of picking the college football playoffs outright. So based on Gonzo getting his Michigan and Washington semifinal picks right, I think it's looking good for Washington that Gonzo's taking you. And if you're Michigan, you probably hate the fact that I just took you to win, because I cannot seem to get it right this year. My spread record has been awful, so I probably have done Michigan an injustice by picking them to win and cover. So we'll see how it goes this year. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching and thank you for listening. Hopefully this provided you a good, insightful breakdown of the national championship game from a lot of different angles that a lot of other podcasts and outlets don't give you. So leave a like if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment. Let me know your scoring predictions. I want to know what a lot of you think. We put out a poll a few days ago, and more than 50% of you think that Washington is going to win this game. So I'm in the minority there. So let me know what you guys think. Comment below. Leave a like for the video. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. And if you're new here, subscribe. Check out all our other content. Check out our shorts page as well. Have a great day and enjoy your college football national championship game on Monday night. See you guys then.